Hey everyone, I'm so glad you're here. Please like and subscribe to the channel to give me more motivation to tell more interesting stories. Now let's begin. You're standing on the dock in Southampton, April 10th, 1912, clutching a ticket that might as well be made of gold. Around you, a sea of travelers, men in top hats, women with gloved hands and feathered hats, children clinging to luggage handles swirl like the tide itself. And there she is, Titanic, a steel colossus, 882 feet of ambition and arrogance gleaming in the spring light. She doesn't just sit at the dock, she owns it. Her name painted in bold black letters, her hull rising like a modern-day castle. You feel it in your chest. This is more than a ship. It's a floating promise. You pass through the gates, the crowd thinning into streams based on class. First class glides up the gangway like royalty boarding an ark. Second class moves with dignity. Third class steerage waits with weary smiles and knotted fingers. You belong somewhere in that middle tier, with a view of both worlds and a clear sense that one of them isn't meant for you. A mainstream historical fact. The RMS Titanic was the largest passenger ship in the world at the time, touted as unsinkable thanks to its 16 watertight compartments. It could carry over 200 people, but it only had lifeboats for about half. You board to the sound of bells creaking ropes and a band playing upbeat tunes that make you forget the rumors of ice. Porters bustle, crew shout. The floor under your shoes hums with power. You're inside now, past the threshold, where everything smells like salt steel and fresh paint. And carpets, rich, endless carpets. You pass the first-class grand staircase and do a little double take. Even the ceiling sparkles. You half expect a butler to float down from heaven, offering caviar and regrets. That's not for you, of course, but still you linger, just long enough to pretend you belong. A quirky tidbit, first-class passengers could use an onboard Turkish bath squash court and even a heated swimming pool. Third-class passengers, they got plain soap and shared sinks. But hey, the ocean's free, right? Your cabin is modest but new. The bed smells of starch and seawater. The porthole frames the world like a moving painting. You unpack slowly, half waiting for the whole thing to vanish in a puff of dreams. But it doesn't. You're really here. The ship pulls away and the docks shrink. People wave handkerchiefs. Someone cries. You just grip the railing, feeling the engine pulse beneath your feet. As the wind brushes your face and the crowd becomes specks, you think, I'm going somewhere better. Historians still argue whether Titanic's hype created a false sense of security. Some say the ship's sheer size gave passengers a dangerous confidence. Others blame the White Star Line's marketing. Either way, you believe what they told you, nothing can go wrong. That night you explore. You roam the decks, watch smokestacks puff into the sky like sleepy giants, peek into card rooms where men bet fortunes they'll never collect. You smile at strangers. Everyone here has a story they're pretending isn't heavy, even you. Dinner is formal even in second class. Napkins folded like swans. Soup you can't pronounce. A band plays somewhere behind the curtain of voices and silverware. The conversation flows around you. New York money, marriages, futures. Everyone talks like they'll arrive. You sleep deeply rocked by the rhythm of the sea, dreaming of skyscrapers and clean starts. And if there's a whisper beneath it all, cold, low, almost imperceptible, you don't hear it. Not yet. You wake to soft vibrations in the walls. Not loud. Just the low, persistent murmur of a ship that knows its way through water. You stretch beneath the crisp sheets, a little surprised to be on a moving palace. Titanic hums like a sleeping beast, powerful but oddly peaceful. Your room is still neat, your shoes still dry, and the sea outside your porthole sparkles like scattered sapphires under a gentle April sun. Time to explore. You head to the upper decks, feet echoing on polished floors. Stewards nod politely. The second-class promenade is bright fresh with sea air and blessedly uncrowded. You lean on the white railing and look down at the churning wake slicing the Atlantic like a knife through cream. Somewhere far below, coal is shoveled by sweating men into roaring furnaces. Up here, you're admiring the view with a soft pastry in hand. A mainstream historical fact. The Titanic's engines burned over 600 tons of coal per day, all shoveled by hand. More than 170 firemen and trimmers worked shifts deep in the belly of the ship in temperatures exceeding 100 degrees. You never see them, but you owe them every knot you travel. First class is just one deck above, but it feels like another world. You sneak a glance through a wide doorway and nearly choke on the elegance, gilded columns, fresh-cut flowers, velvet drapes thick enough to muffle your entire childhood. A woman in diamonds lifts a teacup like it's the Holy Grail. Back in your section, it's quieter, less polished, but real. You chat with a kind-eyed schoolteacher heading to Boston, a violinist from Liverpool, a young woman nursing a secret, probably a stowaway heartache, judging by the way she stares at her shoes. You all agree this ship is something else. You pass the library, the smoking lounge, the electric elevators that glide like ghosts between decks. And yes, you spot the gymnasium with its wooden rowing machines and that weird electric horse. You make a mental note to not embarrass yourself there later. A quirky tidbit. Titanic had an onboard mechanical camel in the gym. Yes, a fake camel. It was used for exercise and amusement, especially for first-class ladies who wanted to experience exotic thrills without getting sand in their boots. That evening, you head out just before sunset. The sea is calm, glass smooth, the kind of calm that makes you believe this voyage could go on forever. You walk the deck and eavesdrop on lives in motion. A couple arguing about New York real estate, a kid marveling at how big the moon looks out here, an old man talking about 1899 like it was last week. Historians still argue whether the calmness of the sea that night played a role in what was to come. Some suggest the still water made spotting icebergs harder, no waves breaking at the base to give them away. Others say it simply lulled the crew into complacency. But none of that crosses your mind yet. You're too busy being impressed by the engine's heartbeat, by the waiters' uniforms, by the fact that there's a menu for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then second dinner, and the bathwater heated. You're starting to think this isn't just a journey, it's a performance. One carefully choreographed scene after another with you playing a minor but delighted role. The unsinkable ship, you whisper to yourself like it's a prayer and a promise rolled into one. Before bed, you write a quick letter. You tuck it into your pocket, ready to be mailed when you arrive. You can already picture the words, "Dearest, this ship is beyond imagination. I feel like I'm floating on a palace. Can't wait for you to see what I've seen." You don't finish the letter. You figure there's time. The next morning greets you with bright sun, polished silverware, and the smell of fresh bread drifting through second-class corridors. Titanic doesn't just sail, it performs. Every meal is a scene, every hallway a stage. Breakfast is an affair. You're seated beside a nervous professor and a woman who insists on discussing hats for 40 straight minutes. The food, however, is worth it. Omelets, toast, marmalade, and a cup of tea that seems to refill itself. You eat like the world is safe and permanent. Down the hall, a steward makes a quiet joke about the unsinkable ship, Everyone laughs. Not a bold laugh, more like a chuckle wrapped in silk. You smile too. It's starting to feel true. A mainstream historical fact, Titanic was equipped with a double-bottomed hull and 16 watertight compartments. The builders claimed the ship could stay afloat with any two of them flooded. This feature was so hyped that newspapers ran headlines like, "Practically unsinkable." No one thought to question the word practically. After breakfast, you stroll the decks again. Passengers lounge on deck chairs in fur coats playing cards and reading Dickens. Some of the younger ones race to the gymnasium to try the rowing machines or get laughed at by the electric horse. You hear someone say they spotted a celebrity in first class, maybe Isidore Straus, the Macy's magnate, or some famous opera singer. No one's quite sure, but it adds to the sparkle. You pass a steward polishing the brass rail for the fourth time today. He sees your expression and grins. "Even perfection needs a shine," he says. You laugh. He's not wrong. A quirky tidbit. Titanic's second-class accommodations were nicer than many first-class cabins on other ships. That included indoor plumbing, electric lights, and bathtubs, not exactly common luxuries in 1912. That evening, you're invited to a small gathering in the second-class lounge. Someone brought a violin. Someone else sings soft, warbling tunes from Ireland and Wales. You sit near the fire nursing a cup of warm cider, and for a moment you forget the world beyond the ship even exists. You almost forget ice is a thing. Outside the sea is calm again, eerily so. You step onto the outer deck, and the cold hits like a soft slap. Not bitter, not brutal, just sharp, clean. It makes you draw your coat tighter and glance at the horizon. There's nothing but black sea and silver sky. Still no one's worried. Why would they be? Historians still argue whether the confidence aboard Titanic contributed to the crew's delayed reactions later. Some say the wealth and elegance of the passengers created a psychological buffer disaster, couldn't possibly reach such refinement. Others suggest it was simply human nature. We trust what comforts us.
And Titanic, oh, she comforts.
That night, you notice more than you did the day before. A slight lean in the staircase, a hush that hangs longer in conversation, a steward who double-checks the lifeboat deck before disappearing below. None of it feels ominous, just efficient. You climb to the top deck before bed. There are stars above you, like you've never seen before, pinpricks in the velvet sky. You exhale into the cold and trace your own breath. Behind you, the ship stretches on and on, her smokestacks, belching slow clouds. Ahead of you, the bow cuts through the Atlantic like it owns the sea. You stand still for a moment, let the chill sink in, then whisper just for yourself, "Nothing this perfect can break." And far out in the dark, unseen, unsensed, and so very real, an iceberg waits. You wake to the static buzz of voices in the hallway, low-clipped professional. Not alarming, not exactly, but urgent, like someone trying not to wake the house while yelling fire through a whisper. You crack the door and catch the tail end of a sentence. Another message just came in from Masaba. Ice ahead. You blink. Ice. You're halfway into your shoes before your mind catches up. You glance out the porthole. Nothing. Just water stretching out like a silver-gray sheet, indifferent and endless. After breakfast, coffee toast, a boiled egg, you didn't finish. You make your way past the Marconi room. That's where the wireless operators live, tapping Morse code, so fast it sounds like rain on a tin roof. You don't go in. You don't need to. You already overheard enough. A mainstream historical fact. The Titanic received at least 6 separate iceberg warnings on April 14, 1912. Some were acknowledged. Some were misplaced. One was even missed entirely buried under a stack of passenger messages. The ship hums along blind to what it's gliding toward. You watch as officers scan the horizon with binoculars. Or wait, you blink. The lookout in the crow's nest is using his eyes, just his eyes. You ask a steward later. He shrugs. No binoculars, locked in a cupboard. Nobody can find the key. A quirky tidbit. Yes, historians confirm this. The ship's binoculars were accidentally left behind in Southampton, locked away in a storage locker. The key, it was in the pocket of Second Officer David Blair, who had been reassigned before departure. Oops. You try not to think about that. Instead, you spend the afternoon as everyone else does, lounging, reading, socializing, walking laps around the deck. You overhear a man telling his wife, "The iceberg thing's overblown. This ship could ram the moon and come out fine." You want to believe him. By dinner, the tension has faded again. First class hosts a lavish feast. Even second class gets an extra dessert course. The ship is making good time. Everyone's in high spirits. Except for the radio operators. You pass one of them around 8 p.m., and his face looks like he hasn't slept since 1903. He's swamped shuffling telegrams, trying to keep up with all the passengers sending messages to loved ones. Historians still argue whether the crew underestimated the iceberg warnings because the messages were delivered with too little urgency, or perhaps filtered through the ship's chain of class and command. After all, the Titanic was built for comfort, not panic. You step outside after dinner. It's colder. The kind of cold that bites straight through wool and skin and something even deeper. You head to the forward well deck. The wind stings your cheeks. The stars seem brighter tonight. Closer. You can almost hear the sea breathing. Somewhere far off, a ship's lights flicker, then vanish. Back inside, you warm up near the fireplace, but your thoughts remain frozen. What if they're wrong? What if the unsinkable part was just really good marketing? You shake your head. No, it's Titanic. They wouldn't have dared launch her without knowing she was safe. Would they? You go to bed early. You tuck yourself in like a child, listening to the steady rhythm of the engines and the occasional creak of something old pretending to be new. The ship rocks gently, reassuringly, like a lullaby sung by steel. And far above you in the crow's nest, a young man scans the ocean with his naked eyes. He's about to see something that changes everything. You are jolted awake by nothing, not a sound, not a crash, just a strange, almost imperceptible pause, like the entire ship suddenly inhaled and forgot how to exhale. You sit up. The engine's rhythm is gone, not slowed, gone. No hum in the walls, no vibration under the floorboards, just silence, heavy and unnatural. You pull on a coat and open your door. The hallway is oddly quiet. A few heads poke out. No panic, just confusion. Someone mumbles about stopping to check the engines. Another guesses they're avoiding sea ice. You don't believe either. You climb up to the promenade deck. The cold hits instantly brutal, unforgiving. It's colder than yesterday, colder than you thought the ocean could ever be. You lean over the railing. Darkness, water, stars, nothing else, until you look straight ahead. There's a strange glitter on the water's surface, a jagged shimmer like shattered glass. And then you see it. The iceberg, a mainstream historical fact. At 11:40 p.m. on April 14, 1912, Titanic struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic. The berg scraped along the starboard side, rupturing at least 5 of the ship's watertight compartments. The collision lasted less than 10 seconds, but it sealed the ship's fate. You overhear someone say they felt a slight bump. Another says they heard a distant grinding. No one knows yet, but the crew moves faster than before. Stewards dart from door to door. Officers murmur into the dark. You catch a flash of white on the well-decked chunks of ice scattered like confetti. A group of second-class boys laugh and kick at them. One tries to pocket a piece like it's a souvenir. A quirky tidbit. Some passengers actually played football with pieces of the iceberg after the collision. One even posed with a chunk for a photograph, because nothing says this is fine like an impromptu ice party. The truth begins to drip down through the decks like a leak no one wants to acknowledge. You hear snippets. We're taking on water, forward compartments. Captain says it's just precautionary. Historians still argue whether the crew deliberately underplayed the danger to avoid mass panic. Others believe they genuinely didn't grasp how doomed the ship was until it was too late. You head below deck, again instinct kicking in before logic. You grab your coat, your gloves, your shoes. You leave your suitcase. Something tells you it won't matter. Your neighbor knocks softly. They're saying life jackets, he whispers. You follow him back into the corridor where stewards now carry serious faces and stiff voices. You're directed to the boat deck, but not rushed. Not yet. You think this is probably just a drill, a bizarre, cold midnight drill, but the stairs tilt slightly as you walk up them. You reach the upper deck. It's a quiet chaos. Crew members shout instructions. Families huddle together, coats flapping in the wind. Some laugh nervously. Others argue about returning to their rooms for valuables. The lifeboats dangle from their davits, some half-lowered, some still covered. There's no music this time, no food, no rich mahogany walls, just steel and stars and breath visible in the air. You clutch your collar tighter. Someone next to you mutters, "They said she's unsinkable." Someone else says, "Then why are we putting on life jackets?" You don't answer either of them. You just step closer to the rail, closer to the lifeboats, and closer to the realization that nothing feels safe anymore. Not even Titanic. You wait near the railing, your fingers numb from cold and from gripping the edge like it might keep the truth from slipping in. The ship is listing now, slightly just a few degrees, but it's enough. Enough that people start to notice. Plates in the dining room have slid. A steward nearly lost his footing on the stairs. The horizon doesn't look right anymore. A woman near you asks an officer, "Surely we're not sinking." He doesn't answer, just tells her to step into line and keep calm. A mainstream historical fact. Within 30 minutes of the iceberg collision, Titanic's forward compartments had already flooded beyond recovery. Despite this, many passengers, especially in first and second class, were not informed of the full danger until much later. Lifeboats weren't even filled to capacity in the early hours. You look around and realize not everyone's here. Not yet. Many are still in their cabins, waiting for someone official to say the word emergency. But that word doesn't come easily aboard the unsinkable ship. The crew begins loading lifeboats, slowly, awkwardly. The ropes creak. The canvas groans. You hear one officer shout, "Women and children first," but it's less a command and more a question flung into the dark. The lifeboats, they're tiny, smaller than you thought, meant for what, a dozen, 20. They look like toys against the size of the ship. A quirky tidbit, lifeboat number 1, the very first to leave Titanic, was lowered with only 12 people on board, though it had space for 40. Among them were wealthy passengers and crew members. Some claimed they were afraid more people would make the boat unstable. Others just wanted to get away. You glance up, you hear music. Somewhere near the first-class lounge, a small band is playing softly. Violins mostly. Something light and beautiful, like denial, set to melody. It almost works. For a moment you relax. Then you hear someone scream. You can't see what caused it, but the noise spreads like fire. More passengers rush to the deck. More officers shout. A lifeboat creaks dangerously as it dips toward the ocean. Now the urgency begins to bloom. Historians still argue whether class played a role in survival rates. First-class passengers were closer to the boat deck, had faster access, and were given more information early. In third class, many were left behind locked gates, confused and misled for far too long. You try not to think about that. You just try to find your place in the growing crowd. Men being pushed back, mothers begging to stay with their sons, a child clinging to a rag doll, her cheeks bright red with cold. You want to help, but you don't know how. An officer raises a pistol, not to fire, but to warn. That moment breaks the illusion for everyone. The spell of opulence shattered. You're not on a floating hotel anymore. You're on a sinking ship. You spot a half-lowered boat. A woman refuses to get in unless her husband can join. The officer hesitates, then shoves the man back. The boat goes down without him. Someone beside you mutters, "This can't be happening." But it is. The band plays on. You hear the faintest trace of a hymn, "Nearer My God to Thee." Whether it's rehearsed or reflex, you don't know. It sounds like surrender in a beautiful suit. You search for familiar faces. That school teacher, the violinist, the hat lady. Most are gone, either in boats or lost in the shifting crowd. A child sobs behind you. A man demands answers from a steward who says nothing, just hands him a life jacket with shaking hands. The tilt is worse now. Doors swing open on their own. The chandeliers in the first-class dining room sway like pendulums in a countdown. You whisper something, maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. No one hears it. The lifeboats keep going down, and the water keeps rising. The tilt is undeniable now. You feel it underfoot as you move one step slightly longer than the next. Tables have slid against walls. A pitcher rolls endlessly back and forth on the carpet of the second-class lounge, trailing cold tea in its wake. And the panic has started to breathe. Not loud yet, not riotous, but you can smell it in the air. A kind of human static, eyes darting, voices quivering. A woman next to you keeps tightening the scarf around her daughter's neck like a spell might keep her safe. The lifeboats are lowering faster now. Officers bark instructions more sharply. "Get in, ma'am." "You can't go, step back, sir." The deck is no longer a place to promenade. It's a narrowing platform in a world that's turning sideways. A mainstream historical fact. By 1:30 a.m., Titanic had launched more than half of her lifeboats, many still not full. People were reluctant to board the tiny boats into the icy blackness, preferring the false safety of the massive ship. Tragically, this hesitation cost lives. You try to stay calm. You follow the line. You scan for openings. A man beside you, elderly, dignified, smiles bitterly and says, "No use pretending now is there." Then he hands his gloves to a younger man without another word. You realize something. The water is now visible on deck. Not a trickle, a presence, lapping at the edges like a patient thief. The air is sharper. Not just cold metallic like the breath of the ocean itself is seeping in. You catch sight of one of the musicians. The cellist may be now playing without sheet music, just following the lead of the violinist, who you swear has tears frozen to his cheeks. A quirky tidbit. The band aboard Titanic played for over 2 hours after the collision. None of them survived. Survivors later recalled their final song as either Autumn or Nearer My God to Thee. Scholars still debate which it was, but everyone agrees it was beautiful. You're waved back again. A steward apologizes, but you're a man, and space is running low. You understand. You hate it, but you understand. Behind you, you hear a roar like something massive falling. A funnel, no, not yet. Maybe a boiler room collapsing. Maybe just the ship groaning under its own weight. You think about jumping. You really do. But then you see a child barely 6 alone near the railing, coat half-buttoned, cheeks red, and eyes glassy with confusion. You lift her without asking, march straight to the next boat. She's alone, you say, your voice louder than you expect. Put her in. The officer hesitates, nods. They lower her in with trembling hands. She doesn't cry, just stares at you like she knows you're lying when you say, you're going to be just fine. Historians still argue whether more people could have survived if the crew had prioritized filling boats to capacity over social order and class separation. Some suggest 500 more lives could have been saved if lifeboats were filled entirely. But panic pride and protocol left seats empty. You take 3 steps back. The deck groans again, louder. And now you hear it. The stern is rising, just slightly, but enough that it tilts the world in a way your body can't ignore. People fall, some slide, others run the wrong direction toward the bow that's already kissing the sea. You cling to a vent pipe chest, heaving mind blank. The ship shudders. The orchestra plays a final note, and the night splits open with screams. The screams are everywhere now, not background noise, not panic at a distance. They are up close inside your skin. You watch a man fall, sliding across the tilting deck as if gravity has changed loyalties. His coat flutters behind him like a flag surrendering to the inevitable. He disappears over the rail without a sound. The ship groans long, metallic, mournful, a noise that doesn't belong in the world of humans. It's the sound of something enormous, breaking faith with physics. You scramble uphill, yes, uphill. Titanic is tipping the bow down the stern, lifting like it wants to touch the stars. Lifeboats dangle half-loaded. Some ropes tangle, some snap. A lifeboat crashes into the sea, tossing passengers like confetti. Another nearly flips. You grip a rail as the world tilts farther. Every breath is labored now, not just from cold, but from knowing. This is really happening. A mainstream historical fact. By around 2:00 a.m., Titanic's bow was nearly submerged. The last lifeboats had already been launched. Hundreds of people were left aboard with no option but to jump or cling to the sinking stern in freezing wind and darkness. You see the lights flicker. It's just a blink, 1 second, maybe 2, but enough to draw a gasp from everyone. The spell of electricity, of order is cracking. You can feel the ship dying. Still, the crew tries to keep control. An officer fires his revolver into the air. Back he shouts, though no one's listening. Not anymore. Some leap now into the ocean, into the unknown. Their bodies vanish into black water. You hear splashes, then silence. The sea is not a comforter. It swallows. You crouch beside the funnel-housing wind, clawing at your coat. You've lost a glove, and your fingers are already losing feeling. Around you, people cling to railings, vents, even each other. Someone begins to pray, loudly. Another person curses the captain. You don't pray. You don't curse. You just hold on. A quirky tidbit. One survivor. Charles Jaukin, the ship's chief baker, survived the freezing Atlantic waters for nearly 2 hours after the sinking. His secret: he'd consumed a significant amount of whiskey before the plunge, which may have helped him resist the cold longer than others. You almost laugh when you think of it. Maybe I should have visited the bar one last time. The tilt grows sharper. You're nearly vertical now. People crawl like insects up the deck, trying to stay with the stern as the bow disappears into the sea. Historians still argue whether more lifeboats might have saved everyone, or if the chaos would have overwhelmed any system, no matter how well prepared. What's clear is that no one truly believed Titanic would ever get to this point. But here you are. One funnel collapses with a roar. It crushes the water, slams into swimmers, sends waves cascading over lifeboats. You see one tip dangerously before righting again. The lights flicker again and go out. The ship goes dark. No more chandeliers, No more brass, no more illusion, just blackness and cold and screaming. You feel it before you hear it, the final snap. Titanic's spine breaks. The stern rises sharply, almost vertical. People fall like confetti in the wrong season. Furniture crates, even sections of steel, tear loose. The sounds are unbearable metal shearing wood, exploding, people crying out for mothers, fathers, gods. You close your eyes. This is the end. And then, the ship drops beneath you. Not gently, not politely. It plunges. You fly for a moment. Your feet lose the deck. Gravity forgets how to function. Then, impact. Freezing water like knives under your skin. You surface, gasp, choke, flail. You are now in the North Atlantic at 2:20 a.m. The Titanic is gone, and you are one of the few still breathing. The cold isn't just cold, it's another creature. It crawls under your skin, between your bones, into your chest, and starts squeezing from the inside out. You try to breathe. Your lungs spasm. Your throat burns. Every nerve in your body lights up like it's trying to warn you you are not built for this. You tread water barely. The ocean is black and endless. Around you, others thrash wail, call out names you don't know. Some cry for help. Others whisper prayers. A few are already silent, floating like paper dolls in the freezing tide. A mainstream historical fact. The water temperature that night was around 28 degrees, 2 dares below freezing. Hypothermia could set in within 15 minutes. Most people didn't drown. They froze. You spot debris, a broken door, an overturned bench, a floating crate. You lunge for the nearest piece, a chunk of wooden paneling, and clutch it like it might offer warmth. It doesn't. But it floats, and that's enough. Screams fill the air, hundreds of voices, but they start to fade quickly. The ship is gone now. No more lights, no more music, no more towering steel pride. Just you, the ocean, and the sound of death happening in slow motion. A lifeboat drifts nearby. You can see it. You can hear the voices of those inside, murmuring, shocked, huddled in coats and disbelief. You call out. They don't turn. Another man shouts. Come back, he begs. Please, just take my wife. Please. No one answers. A quirky tidbit lifeboats closest to the sinking ship often didn't return to help due to fear of being swamped by desperate swimmers. Only Lifeboat 4 and later Lifeboat 14, led by 5th Officer Harold Lowe, attempted partial rescues. You try to kick, try to move closer to anything solid, but your legs are sluggish, like they've given up. Your jaw won't close properly anymore. Your fingers can't grip. Still you float. You hear a lullaby. No, not a lullaby. Just a young woman not far softly singing to herself, rocking back and forth. She doesn't seem to know she's in the water. Her hair floats like seaweed around her shoulders. You blink salt from your eyes. She stops singing. Historians still argue whether the Titanic's final moments were truly as silent as some survivors describe. A sudden eerie hush, they said, once the cries faded. A soundless void, filled only by water slapping against lifeboats and the low moan of the sea reclaiming her space. You lie back floating. The stars are endless above you, so bright, so cold. You try to think of something warm, a fire, a meal, a laugh shared, but the cold has crept behind your eyes into your thoughts. Everything slows. Someone touches your arm. A lifeboat. No, just another body drifting into you. You don't even flinch. The panic is gone now, replaced with a dull ache, a sleepy surrender. Then a whistle, not in your head, not a hallucination, a real whistle. You force your head to turn. There in the dark, a light, a real one, Lantern, glinting off water, a lifeboat moving. You hear a voice, British accent, loud, sharp, hopeful. Is anyone alive out there? It's Officer Harold Lowe. He came back. You want to call out, but no sound comes. Your voice is locked somewhere behind your frozen ribs. You wave, weakly, pointlessly. You feel yourself slipping under just as an arm grabs your coat. And for the first time in hours, someone pulls you up. Your world returns in fragments. Salt on your lips, a splinter pressing into your cheek, the ache of limbs forced to remember they still exist. You're in a lifeboat now, rescued, if such a word still means anything, cramped between shivering bodies, your face half buried in a stranger's shoulder. They don't pull away. No one does. Everyone here understands the cold is not polite. It doesn't care about space or class or smell or shame. You stare at your hands. They look like someone else's white stiff, not quite alive. Your breath fogs the air, but even that feels borrowed. The boat rocks gently. The cries have faded. All that remains now is the sound of water slapping hull and the occasional soft sob. A mainstream historical fact: of the approximately 200 passengers and crew aboard Titanic, only 705 survived. Nearly 1,500 lives were lost, making it one of the deadliest peacetime maritime disasters in history. You squint at the horizon. There a light, distant, flickering, getting closer. The Carpathia, the ship that heard Titanic's call and raced through ice fields to reach her survivors. Too late for most, but not for you. Somehow not for you. A quirky tidbit. The RMS Carpathia's captain, Arthur Rostron, ordered everything: lifeboats, lights, doctors, blankets prepared the moment the distress call arrived. He pushed the engines to near overload, arriving just after 4 a.m. His crew pulled survivors aboard for 4 hours in total silence. You watch as the dark shape draws nearer its lights, haloed in morning mist. As it looms into view, people in your lifeboat begin to stir. Some cry openly, some pray. One man just laughs quietly, like the noise startled even him. They haul you up with thick ropes. Your feet don't work, so you're lifted like luggage. A nurse wraps you in a blanket. Someone hands you a mug. Tea broth, you don't care. It's warm. That's all that matters. You sit, you breathe, and then you look back. The ocean is calm, flat, indifferent. No wreckage, no funnels, no grand ship. Titanic has vanished beneath the sea, and with her 1,000 stories unfinished. Historians still argue whether the tragedy of Titanic changed the world or merely shocked it into temporary awareness. Yes, new maritime laws followed. Yes, lifeboats became mandatory. But the ship itself became more than metal. She became myth, a symbol, a ghost. A steward offers you dry socks. You nod. Across the deck, a woman calls softly, "Anna. Has anyone seen my daughter? Anna." No one answers. Near the rail, 2 boys cry into each other's arms, no adults with them. And further down the deck, someone writes. Not poetry, not prayer, just the facts, times, names, faces, so they won't vanish too. You sit beside a young man who stares at the sea. He turns to you, says they said she was unsinkable. You nod. They said a lot of things. You look down at your hands again. They still don't look like yours. Maybe they never will. Maybe this is what survival feels like, surreal quiet, half-haunted. But above you, the sky lightens. Dawn is coming. And with it, the world that forgot what hubris costs. The sea is calm again, a glass sheet stretching out to the edge of everything. The screams are gone now, replaced by silence, so complete it feels like a blanket. Not the cold one from earlier, but a soft, solemn hush, the kind that settles after the world changes. You sit quietly back against the rail of the Carpathia and let the ocean breathe for you. The sun begins to rise slowly at first, then all at once. Light spills across the waves like gold across silk, brushing your cheeks, your hands warming places the lifeboat never could. You close your eyes. You see the chandeliers of Titanic, the polished staircases, the silver teapots that caught candlelight just right. You hear the band playing, not because they had to, but because someone needed to make beauty while the world fell apart. You remember the strangers who became companions, the child you lifted, the woman who whispered your name in prayer, not even knowing it. The ocean took a ship that night, but not everything. It left behind stories, and one of them is yours. So breathe, slowly. Let the salt air fill your lungs again, not with fear, but with proof that you are still here, that you matter. The Titanic sleeps now far below. But you float. And sometimes in the quiet between waves, you almost hear her music again.